3 people have been charged after a police officer was shot near Yonge in Eglinton. The officer is recovering. We're going to have the latest tonight.
And the man of a 21-year-old, or rather the family of a 21-year-old man, makes a public appeal to help solve his 2019 murder.
And an Ontario child has died of rabies in the first case in this province since 1967.
And the city's holding a public town hall right now to discuss Toronto's action plan to deal with anti-Black racism.
You're watching Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us tonight. A 13-year-old teenager has been arrested. This is in a fatal stabbing in the city's West End earlier this week.
Yeah, the incident happened outside a restaurant in a plaza on St. Clair Avenue near Jane Street early Tuesday morning. So police say the victim is a 54-year-old man. His identity hasn't been released. And police are still trying to notify his next of kin. Investigators say a 13-year-old teenager is facing a first-degree murder charge. The motive behind this stabbing isn't known.
Well, police have provided an update after an officer was shot yesterday during a robbery investigation.
Let's go live to CP24, CJ Liu, who's back at the scene. This is near Yonge and Eglinton. CJ.
Good afternoon. It was around this time yesterday when a police officer was shot just outside of this apartment complex at Yonge and Eglinton. This area was filled with police officers surrounded with crime tape as the search was on for the suspected shooter. Now, a lot has unfolded in the past 24 hours. 3 suspects have been arrested in connection to the robbery investigation and the shooting, including the suspected shooter. The province's police watchdog is also providing us a clearer timeline of what led up to the shooting. Now, this all happened around 5 o'clock yesterday. The SIU says 2 officers were investigating a robbery in the area when they were approached by 2 men. One of the men shot an officer in the abdomen and fled. A second officer tried to shoot at the man but did not hit him. The officer who was shot is a 29-year-old man who had been with the force for about 5.5 years. He was rushed to Sunnybrook Hospital after taking a bullet to the gut. Fortunately, he is recovering well and is in good spirits. Later in the night, police arrested 2 more people, included the suspected runaway shooter. A total of 3 people have been arrested now, and we are learning more about that suspected shooter. He is a 21-year-old man. He was out on bail at the time. He is now facing 14 charges, including attempted murder, a slew of firearms charges, and breach of probation. Now, the president of the Toronto Police Association says this shooting is another example of the dangers officers face every day, and this is now the 2nd officer shot in the past 2 months. Take a listen to his concerns.
I think this should be deeply concerning to everybody in the city of Toronto, what's going on here. Unfortunately, I think these shootings of our police officers, of regular civilians now with the shootings and the murders and the stabbings are becoming all too often and too commonplace. And I think it's time really the city of Toronto and the city council and the mayor take a hard look at it and decide if they want to let Toronto continue to slide in this manner.
Toronto's police chief also says over 600 police officers have been injured in the line of duty so far this year. As for the latest on the shooting investigation and the robbery investigation police were initially called here for, 3 people have been arrested in total. A 21-year-old man, that's the man arrested the alleged shooter, as well as a 22-year-old woman in connection to the robbery, as well as a 15-year-old teenage boy. Back to you.
All right, CJ Liu reporting live from Midtown tonight. CJ, thanks so much for this update. Well, police are offering a reward for information in an unsolved murder from 5 years ago.
Yeah, the 21-year-old victim's family, they're making an appeal for the public for tips. So right now, let's go live to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who's at Toronto Police Headquarters. Steve, you were there listening to the family.
Yeah, and it was gut-wrenching to listen to the mom make a very emotional appeal to the public for information pertaining to her son's murder. Her son, Amir Narain, was murdered in September of 2019. He was 21 years of age at the time. We're showing you his picture right now. Police say that in September of 2019, 2 unknown suspects drove Amir's 2018 Chevy Malibu into the parking lot of 2700 Kipling Avenue. And they left Amir in that vehicle. He had been shot, and he died. And he was left in that vehicle for some 18 hours before his body was discovered. And the police released video surveillance of the two suspects getting out of the vehicle. And although you can't see their faces clearly, if you know of these people, you certainly will recognize how they walk, you'll recognize their mannerisms, perhaps even the clothing that they were wearing. So this is something that the police certainly put a lot of thought in before you have the family come before the cameras and make a public appeal. But when you've got a case that's 5 years old and you've run out of leads, often this is one of the last things that you have left to do. And the hope is that by listening to the emotional appeal of family members pleading for people to provide information to the killer, for information with regards to the killer of their son or daughter or any family member, you hope that it stirs up some emotion and it will affect at least one person who will provide that information to the police. And Crime Stoppers was part of this press conference today, and there is a reward for information leading to the identity of the two suspects who police believe were responsible for this young man's murder. Here's more from the mom who spoke so bravely at this press conference earlier today. Let's listen.
We know that his friends know the where, when, who, how, or what took place. You boys played a role in our everyday life. You boys promised to have each other's backs. Well, this is that time for you guys to have Amir's back. Talk up, please say something. This isn't about being a rat. This is about putting Amir to rest in peace and finding justice for Amir.
Those boys, you are the boys who slept in that woman's basement, who got rides from her, who she cooked dinner for. She's asking one of you, who she believes knows who killed her son, to give the police a call and help this mom get some closure, though she can move on with her life, whatever's left of it after losing her 21-year-old son, tragically in this senseless homicide. Help her out. Send it back to you guys.
All right, that's some real talk from CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan. Thanks, Steve. Well, closing arguments began today in the sexual assault trial of Jacob Hogarth in Northern Ontario. So Hogarth's defense lawyer told the jury that he did not rape the complainant, but rather had a consensual one-night stand with her about 8 years ago. The defense claims that the singer was falsely accused to justify the complainant's pain and gain sympathy from those around her due to the nature of the encounter. Both Hogarth and his accuser took the stand in the trial. They offered starkly different accounts of the June 2016 night in Kirkland Lake.
Well, former fashion mogul Peter Nygaard is seeking bail as he appeals his sex assault convictions and sentence in Toronto. The 83-year-old received an 11-year prison sentence last month after being convicted of 4 counts of sexual assault. The Ontario Court of Appeal says a motion to grant bail pending the appeal was heard yesterday, but the judge's decision has yet to be released. Nygaard's lawyers claim the sentence is excessive and that the trial judge made several errors.
All right, it's 5:08, 22 degrees. Let's get a check on the roads with CP24 traffic specialist Heather Sheehan.
Hi there. Well, trying to keep on top of some developing news. We have a crash on the QEW, Toronto-bound QEW on-ramp at Bowen Road. Let me just bring up another camera. Again, we don't have a visual on this, but all lanes are blocked. So again, Toronto-bound QEW on-ramp at Bowen Road, all lanes blocked. Interesting to note, this is the same area where a serious rollover happened this morning, closing the roadway for several hours. It reopened a short while ago, but again, we're getting word from MTO that it's closed. So unclear what led to this new crash, but do drive carefully. We had some earlier issues on the 403 westbound past Mavis. They look to be cleared. As you can see, traffic is moving through that stretch. Don Valley Parkway, we're seeing a bit of volume, mostly northbound right now from about north of Danforth to north of Lawrence, just volume through that stretch. And the westbound Gardner, that is jam from about Sherbourne to west of Bathurst. Off the major routes, northbound Kipling at Rexdale, there is a crash in the area, slowing the drive. That's it. Back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Well, Hamilton police are investigating a homicide downtown this afternoon.
It happened in the area of Colborne Street. Investigators are warning residents that they can expect a large police presence between Bay Street and Park Street. So police haven't said how many people were involved or whether they've identified any possible suspects. But anyone with information who has to come forward.
Well, police have released an image of a suspect wanted in a fatal stabbing on the weekend. Investigators are searching for 20-year-old Nelson Luong. 22-year-old Devon Christopher Knight and 23-year-old Haywood Chan were arrested earlier in the week, and they're charged with first-degree murder in the stabbing. Police say on September 28th, around 6:45 p.m., 51-year-old Clayton Hunt was stabbed following an altercation near Finch and Brimley. Life-saving measures were performed, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Police are asking witnesses or anybody with information to come forward.
Well, 5 members of a family, including 3 children, they're all in a hospital after they were hit by a vehicle in Etobicoke. So emergency crews were called just after 6 last evening to Islington and Orell Avenue. That's north of Dundas. Police say 3 children, a 1-month-old, a 1-year-old, and a 4-year-old, as well as a man. They were all taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. A woman suffered critical injuries and was rushed to hospital via an emergency run. So police are still trying to piece together what happened. And the driver, a 77-year-old woman, did stay at the scene, and it's not clear if any charges are pending.
Well, Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg was celebrated today as he retires after a 32-year career.
He was joined by city and provincial officials as well as first responders from across the city for a change of command ceremony at Toronto Fire headquarters on Dufferin. Chief Pegg was piped out of the event. He took time to embrace his colleagues as he walked alongside his wife out of the lot, getting into his vehicle and driving away. Deputy Fire Chief Larry Coco will take over as interim chief effective tomorrow, which is technically Pegg's last day on the job.
And speaking of chiefs, Toronto's top cop is opening up about his battle with cancer. Chief Myron Demke revealing today that he completed treatment at Princess Margaret Cancer Center on this day in 2019. He says he had been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer in one of his vocal cords. The chief says he had his 5-year checkup yesterday and was declared cancer-free by his doctor. Demke says he can now consider himself cured, but he will still need to have yearly checkups.
An Ontario child has died of rabies. The acting medical officer of health for the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit confirmed the death during a board meeting. He says that the child was exposed to a bat in northern Ontario last month. The parents didn't see any bites, scratches, or saliva at the time, so didn't think a rabies vaccine was necessary. But the child became infected and died in hospital 2 weeks ago. Once symptoms set in, the infection's almost always fatal. There have only been 26 human cases of rabies in Canada since 1924. In this case, this is the first in the province since 1967.
It is now 5:13, 22 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And we're live at City Hall. This is where a town hall is being held tonight to discuss how to deal with racism in Toronto. That coverage is next. The city's holding a public town hall right now to talk about Toronto's action plan to confront anti-black racism.
For more on this, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya at City Hall. Tell us more about the conversations and the performances that are happening where you are, Lindsay.
I cannot hear anything anyone is saying right now because it is so loud here, but so wonderfully so. We've got performers. You can see these drummers on the stage here at City Hall, all in part of this. This is the town hall at City Hall, and this is really the beginning of it. It kicked off at 5 p.m. tonight. Hopefully you can hear me properly. We are surrounded now by community members from the Black community as well as Black business owners and even city officials as well, all coming together after quite a lengthy public consultation that's been happening for the last couple of months, really about how the city can improve its 10-year anti-racism plan within the city, anti-black racism. This follows a 5-year plan earlier, and we've been speaking to people about what this really means. So I'm joined now with Chef Hassan, the owner of Chef Hassan's Kitchen. Thank you for joining me.
No problem, no problem. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. So I know you're busy. You're setting up all of this. It looks delicious. I can smell it. It looks amazing. Why was it important for you to be here today?
Well, it's beautiful to always come together, but, you know, any chance you can get to change the status quo, talking about, you know, anti-racism and talking about being able to change the ideals and social constructs that are already put in place in society. It's always beautiful to see community come together and talk about a cause that really matters and is really present right now.
How can the city improve things? What are some of the main priorities you'd like to see the city focus on to improve and try to get away from anti-Black racism?
Well, you can always say the biggest thing pledge in the city right now is job for the youth right now. So I know the city's working on trying to create more jobs for the youth right now to try to get youth off the streets, different programming, nonprofit programming. So it's going to be great. You know, there's work's being done, and hopefully, you know, the progress can keep being made.
I know you're busy. What's on the menu?
Well, we have different cultures. We have puff puff, which is the African version of the. Let me open it a little bit. This is the African version of the let's say fried dumpling or and we have some Caribbean stuff. We have some like jollof, jerk chicken, plantain. We have a different combination of different wraps, chicken. Yeah, we got a little bit of everything, you know. In the company, we try to do a one-stop shop when it comes to the catering, private dining, and corporate events. Try to put it together for our clients.
It looks amazing, smells amazing. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so yeah, that's just some of what we've been hearing tonight in terms of how the city can improve, right, when it comes to priorities. Wow, it's a lot quieter now in here. But yeah, so this is just the start. We know Mayor Olivia Chow is going to be here speaking a little bit later, and we will get that for you live. But a lot going on here, a lot of really interesting conversations, a lot of important conversations in terms of how to turn things into action and not just talk. So we'll stay here, but for now, we'll send it back to you.
All right, some really important conversations, and it sounds like there's some really good food there as well. Lindsay, thanks so much. That looked delicious. Well, a new project that'll provide permanent homes for unhoused people in Toronto who frequently end up in the emergency rooms. That is now open.
Mayor Olivia Chow helped cut the ribbon on Dunn House in Parkdale this morning. It's the first social medicine supportive housing initiative in the entire country. It'll provide 51 rent-geared-to-income homes to people experiencing homelessness who are also University Health Network patients with a high volume of ER visits and admissions.
Housing is health. That's our message for today, and I know it's one that will continue. Homelessness increases the likelihood of negative health outcomes on almost every measure in infectious disease, substance abuse disorders, broader injury, heart disease, kidney disease, the list goes on and on and on and on.
It's not a big apartment, but it's a home. You can cook there. You can learn to pull your life back together. You wouldn't get wet. You won't freeze. You know, you don't have to walk to a shelter or walk to find food or walk to the hospital or walk to find medication. It really is about a secure roof over the head, but it's also a chance to turn your life around.
Okay, and along with that, Dunn House will welcome its first residents later this month.
It is now 5:19, 22 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
A Manitoba man has been acquitted 50 years after being convicted of murder. More on this story next. 50 years after being found guilty of murder,
a Manitoba man has been acquitted.
Well, Clarence Woodhouse was convicted in 1974 of fatally beating and stabbing a restaurant worker. This was in downtown Winnipeg. He was granted parole in 1983, and last year he filed for a ministerial review of his conviction. His lawyers argue a confession Woodhouse supposedly made was in fluent English, although he primarily spoke Saulteaux. Well, the federal justice minister ordered a new trial, and today the Crown acknowledged in court that the case was a miscarriage of justice. Innocence Canada is calling for an examination of homicide convictions involving Indigenous people over the last 5 decades in Manitoba.
It's been nice to be free, after all these years. Yeah, I like to be out now. Otherwise, you have to go away.
And lawyers with Innocence Canada are also pushing for an independent commission on Wrongful commission, something the federal government says it's committed to establishing.
You can well imagine someone sitting in jail for a crime they didn't commit is not going to be very impressed by the idea of going to the Minister of Justice for help. Whereas if they know there's an independent commission, which is independent of government, that will look at his or her claim, then I think the person's much more likely to make a claim, and that's the experience of other countries that have created such a commission.
And 2 other men convicted in the killing, Brian Anderson and Alan Woodhouse, had their convictions quashed last year. This after a new trial was ordered, and the Crown asked for an acquittal. It
is now 5:23. We're sitting at 22 degrees right now, feeling more like 23. You're watching Live at 5.
The music group Hansen is celebrating their 25th anniversary as independent artists with a new tour. And they had a chance to talk to CP24's Ji Yan Lee.
Welcome back. Well, Hansen exploded onto the music scene in the late 90s with the smash hit You May Remember. That still resonates today. Bakari just gave it away. Take a listen.
I mean, that still hits today. But after that album ran its course, they forged their own musical path as independent artists. Now they're celebrating 25 years of success. That leads them to today, where they're celebrating their musical longevity. The tour that stops in Toronto next week. Our Ji Yan Lee talked to them about the journey.
The most successful artists in history, I mean, ones we admire, are up against obstacles. We all are. You know, every album you put out is a question. But for us, we knew the music, we knew the fans, and ultimately, this is about connection. I mean, I think really just encouraging everybody that has a passion to continue on that path. And that when we started off, we weren't like anything that was out, and we were able to have a breakout, success. And I think every time you go on a tour, every time you put out an album, there's that question in the back of your mind that says, are people going to be there? And you have to start by betting on yourself. So, I mean, we're just proud. We're proud of the fact that we're here, and we put out way more music since we launched the label, became independent, than we did during the earlier period. But ultimately, it's all just one big journey. I mean, you're just going through, grateful that we get to make music, grateful that we get to share songs. I mean, we have the best job on earth just to get to travel the world and share music and have fans that show up and sing along with you is just one of those things you got to pinch yourself, go, hey, this is happening.
Hansen is playing in Toronto at the Danforth Music Hall on October 13th and 14th. It's coming up. Toronto's their only Canadian stop on the tour.
Right now it's 5:28, 22 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Investigators are offering a reward tonight for tips in the unsolved 2019 murder of a 21-year-old man. We're also hearing from his mother. Stay with us for more.
Three people have been charged after a police officer was shot near Yonge and Eglinton. The officer is recovering.
Looking for justice, the family of a 21-year-old man killed 5 years ago makes an emotional appeal to the public tonight.
And an Ontario child has died of rabies in the first case in this province since 1967.
And the city is holding a public town hall tonight. This is to discuss Toronto's action plan to deal with anti-Black racism. We'll take you there live.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. Police are offering a reward for information in an unsolved murder from 5 years ago.
And the 21-year-old victim's family is making an appeal to the public for tips. They're desperate for answers. Let's go live now to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who's at Toronto Police headquarters for us this evening. Steve, it was so hard to listen to this man's mother make that appeal to the public.
Yeah, it certainly was, Lena, and it's something that is always more like a last resort for the police when it comes to a homicide investigation in particular. You certainly don't really want to put a family up in front of the public to make an appeal, a heartfelt appeal, for information pertaining to the death of their loved one, in this case, this woman's 21-year-old son. But when a case runs cold and there are no leads after 5 years, you really have got nothing to lose by doing that. Yes, I'm showing you his picture right now, just 21 years old. Yes, it is gut-wrenching and it's hard to watch, hard to listen to, but sometimes it does stir up that emotion amongst people that are out watching the news conference, and one of those people may just react in such a way that they pick up the phone and they call the tip line or the police directly, and they provide information that will lead to the suspects in in this case, a homicide. So the police tell us that it was September 2019. Amir Nareen was 21 years old. His body was in the back of a black Chevy Malibu that belonged to him, and on that day, his vehicle was driven into the parking lot of 2700 Kipling Avenue by two suspects. He was dead in the back of that car, and his body wasn't found for some 18 hours later. The video that the police released shows two suspects exiting that vehicle and walking away. Now, their faces aren't clear, but if you know of these two people, you certainly will recognize how they walk, you recognize their mannerisms, and the police are asking that if you do suspect that you know who one of those two people might be, you're being asked to give the police a call. So there is a Crime Stoppers reward as well. They were here at this press conference today. The officer in charge spoke, and then we heard from the mom, who made this emotional appeal to both people who have information to give the police a call because she and her family are looking for some closure. Here's more of what mom said earlier on at this press conference. Let's listen.
Amir was remarkable, hardworking young man. He was a great son, brother, cousin, nephew, grandson, and a friend. Amir was taken from us way too early. We asked the people that know the information about the homicide to please come forward. Make that call to Crime Stoppers or the police.
Mom made an appeal to the boys, she said, who know what happened to her son. She said these are the same boys who she cooked for, who slept at her house, who she drove around, who she ordered Ubers for when she couldn't drive. She spoke directly to them and said, you said you were my family, give the police a call and help her with some closure. So if you are one of those boys, you heard mom talking there, she is heartbroken, it's been 5 years, and she's asking for some help. Phone the police, remain anonymous if you wish, provide the names of who you think those two suspects are, and they will take it from there. Just heartbreaking. Send it back to you guys.
Yeah, that is for sure. 5 years later, this family still has no answers. Steve Ryan reporting live tonight. Thanks so much for this, Steve. Also making news, a 13-year-old teenager has been arrested. This is in a fatal stabbing.
This happened in the city's west end. It was earlier this week. So the incident happened outside of a restaurant in a plaza on St. Clair Avenue near Jane Street early Tuesday morning. And police say that the victim is a 54-year-old man. His identity hasn't been released. Police are still trying to notify his next of kin. Investigators say a 13-year-old is facing a first-degree murder charge. The motive, it's still not known.
We take you live to Midtown now, where police have provided an update after an officer was shot yesterday. This was during a robbery investigation. That officer shot in the abdomen.
Yeah, CP24, Sija Liu continues our coverage near Yonge and Eglinton. Sija.
Lena, Bakari, this area outside a parking garage of an apartment building was off limits yesterday. It was here around this time yesterday when a police officer was shot during a robbery investigation, and the search was on for his shooter. Now, 24 hours later, 3 suspects have been arrested, including the suspected shooter. We are now learning he is a 21-year-old man, and he was out on bail at the time. He is now facing 14 charges, including attempted murder, a slew of firearms charges, and breach of probation. The province's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit, also gave us more details today about what led up to the shooting. The SIU says around 5 o'clock yesterday, 2 officers were in this area investigating a robbery when they were approached by 2 men. One of the men shot an officer in the stomach and then made a run for it. A second officer shot at the man who fled but didn't hit him. Now, the officer who took a bullet to the gut is a 29-year-old man who has been with the police force for about 5.5 years. He was rushed to Sunnybrook Hospital in serious condition, but is recovering well tonight and is in good spirits. Now, later in the night yesterday, police arrested 2 more people, including the suspected runaway shooter. Now, Toronto's police chief says he is very concerned about the increase in violence when it comes to police officers in the city. He says over 600 police officers have been hurt in the line of duty so far this year. Here's more on what he had to say.
These are moments where our police family feels it across not just Toronto, but I will tell you from coast to coast, I received messages from police agencies, police leaders, literally from across the country, because these kinds of events touch us all who work in policing. We are very blessed in this country with police officers who serve with great care and great commitment and put their lives on the line and go into harm's way regularly. And when something like this happens, it's very grounding for all of us and reminds us just how difficult it can be.
So tonight, a total of 3 people have been arrested, including the 21-year-old suspected shooter. A 22-year-old woman, as well as a 15-year-old boy, have also been arrested in connection to a robbery investigation. Back to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, CJ. It's 5:37, 22 degrees. Let's get a check on the rush hour commute.
With Heather C.
Hi there, guys. Well, we have a couple problems on the go. Let's go straight to the cameras. Causing some serious delays here. 401 eastbound express at Dixie Road. 2 right lanes and the right shoulder blocked due to a collision. Emergency crews on scene. We have a different angle here. You can see the backup causing some major delays through that stretch. Again, that's the 401 eastbound express at Dixie. Just spotting this new problem. 401 westbound collectors at West in the center lane is blocked due to a collision. So we have more issues there. Speaking of volume, Don Valley Parkway, most of that volume I'm seeing northbound, north of Danforth and north of Lawrence, and the westbound Gardner, the typical volume there from about Jarvis to west of Bathurst. Off the major routes, we have a collision northbound Kipling at Rexdale. That's it. Back to you.
Heather, thanks so much for this. Well, billionaire businessman Frank Stronach is facing more sex assault charges.
And court documents filed in Brampton last week show 3 additional complainants have come forward. Stronach stands accused of 5 additional offenses, including sexual assault and indecent assault. There are now 13 accusers and a total of 18 charges, some dating back to the 1980s. The 92-year-old Stronach was first arrested in early June. He's previously denied all allegations against him.
Well, closing arguments began today in the sex assault trial of Jacob Hogard in Northern Ontario. Hogard's defense lawyer told the jury that he did not rape the complainant, but rather had a consensual one-night stand with her about 8 years ago. The defense claims the singer was falsely accused to justify the complainant's, quote, pain and gain sympathy from those around her due to the nature of the encounter, end quote. Both Hogard and his accuser took the stand in the trial, offering starkly different accounts of what happened on the night of June 2016 in Kirkland Lake.
A former fashion mogul Peter Nygaard is seeking bail as he appeals his sexual assault convictions and sentence in Toronto. So the 83-year-old received an 11-year prison sentence last month after being convicted of 4 counts of sexual assault. The Ontario Court of Appeal says a motion to grant bail pending the appeal was heard yesterday, but the judge's decision has yet to be released. So Nygaard's lawyers claim that the sentence is, quote, excessive and that the trial judge made several errors.
It is 5:40 now, 22 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we're learning new details of the province's lease agreement with Therma Spa at Ontario Place.
The province's lease agreement with Therma Spa at Ontario Place included a promise of 1,600 parking spaces.
Yeah, the government released terms of the deal today. The spa and water park plan, it's been met with criticism, partly because taxpayers are on the hook for the cost of the parking area. An Auditor General report last year suggested Ontario's obligations to provide parking for Therma factored into its decision to relocate the Ontario Science Centre to the redeveloped site. Along with the 1,600 spots for the spa, the province is proposing 900 additional spots for the new Ontario Place. Premier Ford made a deal with the City of Toronto to consider moving the park to Exhibition Place instead of building a garage under the new Science Centre on the waterfront. Well, the group Ontario Place for All says that work began overnight to cut down trees on the West Island. And the group is raising concerns about the future of the 850 mature trees as the site redevelopment gets underway, which includes flood mitigation and shoreline repair.
Well, a new online poll from Angus Reid finds increasing support for Doug Ford despite mounting criticism over his government's performance on key issues. 2 in 5 Ontarians would vote for the PCs if an election were held today. Compare that to just 25% for the NDP and 23% for the Liberals. The support comes despite 80% of voters believing Ford has performed poorly on health care, the rising cost of living, and housing affordability. When it comes to the other parties, 3 in 10 say they don't know enough to evaluate Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, while 39% say they're not familiar enough with the NDP's Marit Stiles to offer an opinion.
Conservatives are not only doubling their number in terms of vote intent over either of those left of center parties, but despite the fact that you've got new leaders in Bonnie Crombie and Marriott Stiles, you just don't have the momentum that they would like to have and like to see against the backdrop of a really unpopular government. So neither the NDP leader nor the Ontario Liberal leader are really setting the house on fire in terms of inspiring potential voters at this stage.
The next provincial election is scheduled for June 2026, but there has been speculation that the Premier may call an early vote next year.
An increasing number of Ontario school boards are reporting deficits and having to use or deplete their reserves. That's according to an internal Ministry of Education briefing. The documents were obtained by the Canadian press. And the briefing materials prepared for Education Minister Jill Dunlop say that overall, school boards are maintaining a healthy reserve level, but some are projected to deplete their reserves over the next few years. The association representing Ontario School Board says budget increases haven't kept pace with inflation.
Well, a new report shows home sales in the GTA rose last month. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board says nearly 5,000 sales were reported in September. That's an 8.5% increase compared with the same month last year. New listings also climbed 10.5% year over year. The average selling price was about $1.1 million, which was down by 1% when compared to September of 2023. Treb says buyers are starting to take advantage of more affordable market conditions that are being brought on by interest rate cuts.
When we do polling, we find that there's a whole range of answers when we ask, how much do rates need to fall before you move back into the market? And, some people say 100 basis points, some people say 300. So I think, we're going to see this sort of cascade over the next, say, 6 to 8 months as we move towards the spring of 2025, where more and more people, that affordability equation is going to work for them.
All right, we're going to take you live to City Hall now because the city is holding a public town hall tonight to discuss Toronto's action plan to confront anti-Black racism. There's Olivia Chow talking. Let's listen in.
That there are from this number plus, next year when we come back together after the 10-year action plan get adopted, we then need to track every year. Have we moved ahead on number of kids hired, recreation programs, space, a number of network. There's huge number of, are they still being suspended? Are they not being suspended? Are they graduating more or less? We need to know. Because having a plan, it's great. Government officials like me can say, I have a 10-year anti-Black racism plan. Oh, wow, looks great, good photos, nice report. You know what, I've been around a long time. I've seen reports on anti-Black, like I can name, right? Alvin Curling, Stephen Lewis. Yeah, many of you are nodding. Yeah, some of you that are as old as I am would remember all of those reports. Guess what? Quite a lot of them are brilliant, except there's no implementation plan. Or that they have an implementation plan, it's just got gathered dust. Not good enough, because I've been around too long. I've seen too many reports. I've seen too many action plans. I've seen many promises, but if you cannot measure the results, then the community won't know how to push. And I want to encourage you, this is a good time. You know why? Because yesterday I just announced a budget consultation plan. Sometimes action requires some money, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. It requires money. Well, who gets the most money? Who should get the most money? Are there more folks that are being housed off the waiting list? Are there more people that are getting affordable housing that are Black? We don't know. Okay? We need to know. We need to measure results. We need to set targets every year, every 5 years, and 10 years. What is our vision? I know what we want generally. We know we want kids to grow up happy, grow up joyous, have wonderful programs, and achieve magnificent things on culture, on heritage, in medicine, in school, in different arts, sports, you name it. We know. How do we get there? That is your job, to help the city, to help our staff, whether it's the library, parks and rec, in every group, economic development, housing, shelter, you name it. We need to be accountable to you. And this is what the action plan can do. Set targets. You get report cards every year. This is what we've done. Good enough, not good enough. A or D or F. We need to know. Okay? So my challenge to you is this. At this time, when we start doing the consultation, often people that are most voiceless do not get heard. And what we need to do is make sure that your voice and the people you represent, because there's a whole lot of people you represent, their voice get heard in this budget consultation. So that
okay, so we've been listening live to Mayor Olivia Chow. This is during a public town hall about the 10-year action plan on anti-black racism. Chow says that it's important to know the number of kids hired, recreation space, graduation rates. This is all necessary to measure results, particularly with respect to the budget consultation. The plan was announced yesterday because she says, look, sometimes action takes money, so that will be taken into consideration with all of this.
Okay, we're going to have a lot more on that town hall tonight coming up. It is 5:51 now, 22 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, the price of the pumps is heading higher as tension in the Middle East continues to rise.
Welcome back. Lebanese officials say 9 people were killed when an Israeli airstrike hit the capital, Beirut, today.
The strike targeted an airport. This was apartment in a multi-story building that houses an office of the Health Society. That's a group of civilian first responders affiliated with Hezbollah. It was the closest strike to the central downtown district of Beirut. This is where the United Nations and government offices are located. It's the second airstrike to hit central Beirut this week, and second to directly target the Health Society in 24 hours. No Israeli warning was issued to the area before it was hit.
Well, the price of oil has been climbing this week with the escalating tension in the Middle East, and now the price at the pumps is heading higher.
Analyst Dan McTagg with Canadians for Affordable Energy says that the price at the pumps will increase a penny tomorrow and 5 cents on Saturday, taking the average price in southern Ontario to $1.53.9 a litre.
5:55, 22 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, rehearsals are underway for the return of the Lion King stage production to Toronto. We're going to take a look next.
Disney's blockbuster musical The Lion King returns to Toronto next month, and rehearsals, they're already underway in a school in the city's West End.
And the cast is gathering at a former Catholic school near Humber and Ossington for the musical rehearsal. The new Toronto production of The Lion King opens November 2nd at the Princess of Wales Theatre, and it's featuring more than 50 actors from Canada and South Africa. The original Canadian production of the musical opened in Toronto in March of 2000.
It's overwhelming because, one, I'm singing my language and I'm representing my country from South Africa. Two, the song itself has a certain meaning that makes people connect with it. As I could say music heals people, but this song specifically, it does a lot. So for me, it feels like an honor to do that to people, to whomever that's going to be watching the show.
We've yet to find a place in the world, touch wood, where we've presented the show that it doesn't speak and, go down well.
A classic that just never gets old. It is 5:59, 22 degrees. You've been watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24.